we are back with Prakshay 2020, the world's first online festival for Ayurvedic life sciences. We've been going strong for 17 hours, and this is our number 18, the grand finale hour. And as always, we always bring you a very special guest. For the grand finale, we have none other than Aditi Govitrikar, Mrs. World 2001, also a clinical psychologist. I would love to bring her on the panel and Sudakshana to introduce our guest.
Thank you so much, Dimple. So, like we all know, Dr. Aditi Kovitkar is an Indian model, actress, and a doctor. She remains one of the Indian supermodels with both medical doctor and psychologist qualification. She's a vegetarian and a Vipassana practitioner. With her films then and now with her talk show Dr. A Talks, she has been spreading happiness and positivity. She won many pageants like the Mrs. World title, and she's still there out presenting lots of positivity and happiness. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for the introduction. We have Aditi Govitrikar online.
Hi, Dimple. Thank you, Sudakshana, for that wonderful introduction. And first of all, Dimple, you have done a fantastic job. I have been watching you since yesterday. You are a powerhouse. I mean, the energy, the positivity that you're spreading, hats off. I mean, really.
Thank you so much. You're very kind with your words. This is something that I've learned from you. Be generous, be humble, no matter what your accomplishments. This is one of those rarest, what do you call, conversations I've had. I wouldn't say rarest, like I've had several conversations with Dr. Aditi Gotrigar in the past, and every time I walk away with some learning because of the kind of wisdom and the experiences you bring to the table, despite all your accomplishments. You are so grounded when it comes to mental, emotional, physical health. You are one of the flag bearers. What brought you into psychology?
Well, I studied human body, as you're aware. I finished my MBBS from Grand Medical College, after which life took me into this field, and I really am grateful that I got to learn so much where modeling and acting is concerned. And I continue to act, of course. But 4 5 years back, I wanted some more intellectual stimulation. At that point, I was thinking, okay, I've studied human body. Now let me go ahead and study human mind. And that's how I took upon this path of psychology. However, before that, 5 years before that, so around 12 years back, I also embarked on a spiritual journey. I have been a Vipassana practitioner and I continue to practice it every single day, even now. So it is a great combination of mind, body, and soul, which I thought, I could definitely help people in getting out of whatever dark places they have been to, so that going forward, they are liberated and they can enjoy the life as it's meant to.
Lovely. In fact, I must, point out to the viewers that Dr. Aditi has studied medical science, but she went one step forward. And you did Vipassana yoga, Vipassana meditation a couple of times. You also practiced Ayurveda. You've been to Prana Clinic and undergone Panchakarma treatment. You're always willing and trying different kinds of modalities. And now you are talking about psychology to people. You've done 50 workshops for the Mumbai police, trying to encourage them into a more positive frame of mind. What drives you? What's that energy that drives you in this direction?
Well, ultimately, what one realizes is that you have to give back to the society. At the end of the day, you are who you are because of people around you. And when I enjoyed the success as an actor and a model, um, it just made me feel like, okay, I need to give back to the society, in addition to the pain that I saw when I was doing my medicine, where we had to deal with patients. That kind of brought me to this understanding that I need, because once you become a celebrity, people also listen to you, right? So why not use this platform to create awareness where mental well-being is concerned? Because when I, like 5 years back, it was a huge taboo, and even today people are not really open to saying, like if one feels unwell, you say that, yeah, I'm going to my physician. But we will never say that, oh, I was feeling low, so I went to my therapist. That still, that acceptance is not there in India as of now. And we have all the resources, and I've shared this with you, Dimple, that why is our happiness quotient so low? If you take the world chart of happiness quotient, we are way below. I mean, we are not even in the top 10, top 50 countries. And we have all the resources. We have sunshine, we have everything, you name it, and we have it. We have the intellectual capacity. We have a huge bank of knowledge, of wisdom, which is Ayurveda and yoga, right? So why are we not happy? And that's when I started this journey to say that no, I need to spread the word, I need to increase the happiness quotient of my country, so that we live the life, that we are meant to, like I said even earlier.
This is very true, like you just pointed out. In fact, Bhutan is called the happiest country in the world, and they
Yes.
have something called as a happiness index. Whenever they make a business decision or an economic decision, they measure how much happiness they'll be able to deliver from it. They don't measure it in terms of money or GDP or in terms of monetary value alone. They measure it in terms of happiness. And you pointed out onto something very important: the taboo of going to a therapist, of going to a psychologist. We lost some beautiful souls in the last few days.
Yes.
We want to put an end to that negativity. We want to create a cult of positivity. We want to create a new cult, which will inspire young boys and girls to think that there is indeed hope and faith in this beautiful world. Why is this such a taboo? And what is this power of being happy? How can we tap into this?
So to respond to two parts of the questions that you put across to me is that um, it is a taboo because of the social conditioning, right? If you take even gender inequality, which is where it begins, as we bring up our children, a boy is not allowed to cry. You will quickly say, "अरे लड़का है, तू क्यों रो रहा है लड़की के जैसे?" So when I hear this, I feel like no, but if you pinch that boy, it is going to hurt him. He's going to go through the same pain that a woman would go. If you cut somebody's veins, the blood is going to be red. So why this difference? Why this gender inequality to say that boys don't cry? It's okay. Then, even for girls, if you are hurting or something has happened, it's okay. It will be fine. No, it will not be fine. As a child, when you fall down, and our parents have done it, and perhaps I have done it to my children now, of course, I'm a lot more mindful that if a child falls down, you say, "अरे it's okay, कुछ नहीं कैसे दर्द हुआ है लगा है." So if we start acknowledging our emotions the way they are, then things will start changing, and this acknowledgement has to start with you. If you ask yourself in the moment, how are you feeling? And this is an exercise that everybody, whoever's listening to us, can start doing that. I actually started doing this by actually setting an alarm on my phone. So I used to ask myself, okay, how am I feeling? What is the emotion word? Because when you ask somebody, how are you? We just say, "I'm fine," even without thinking of what we are feeling. Whether you're sad, happy, angry, we will always say, "Yeah, I'm fine." Right? But what is fine? Fine is not an emotion. So ask yourself, how is it? What are you feeling? And when we start, sorry,
Be honest with ourselves. Sometimes we're not honest with
no,
ourselves.
it's not about honest. It's just about the awareness. Like we're
Right.
not even aware of it because of the social conditioning, because of our upbringing. That if there is pain or ho jayega, theek ho jayega. Come, let's have a cup of tea or let's have a cup of coffee. No, I want to acknowledge the pain I'm going through. That space we do not provide people or to ourselves. So that becomes a very crucial and a starting point of going forward. So that taboo will slowly, I mean, we are working towards it. Of course, the mental wellness practitioners are doing it. You are doing a fantastic job of removing this taboo. So things will change. Of course, it's not going to be an overnight thing. However, now that things have opened up, and especially during this lockdown, a lot of people have realized that they need to pay attention to their mind. Their mind is as, if not more important than your physical body, your physical health.
Very well said. In fact, there's one beautiful takeaway that I had from you during our last interview. We've had several conversations, and each one of them has been enlightening, even for me. You spoke about breathing technique, and
Yeah.
that connects me to the second question of the power of being happy. Breathing. I remember you saying, just be in the moment. And the previous interview that you had with Robin Sharma,
Yeah.
I watched it minute to minute and delayed my interview by another 30 minutes. I was like,
Oh my God, so sweet.
I watched it every single second, and I was like, I can breathe.
Yes.
This was exactly a day before the festival began, like a day or 2 days ago.
Yes, a couple of days back. Yeah. Yes, so breathing is very important, and I'm glad you enjoyed it. And I'll give you a small example of how being in the moment is so important. Today, I got a feedback, a voice note from a friend of mine who we've not spoken for a few months. So she said, I listened to it, and this was a very um, different kind of a compliment, right? She said that, Aditi, what was a very good thing about you is you did not interrupt him at all. And I'm like, yeah. And then when I thought about that, I'm like, we don't even let the other person speak. We don't allow the other person to finish the sentence. We are so in a rush to respond, even without hearing the other person out. So just providing that space allows the opposite person that non-judgmental way of being, and that is how happiness happens. Like, why do you and I share a wonderful relationship? A big part of it is that we allow each other to speak. I mean, think about it, it's a very small thing. Now where breathing is concerned, in Vipassana, of course, it's all about breathing. It begins with breathing, of course. So that is one tool that we have 24/7, 365 days from the time you're born till your last breath. So why not use it? And pranayam, prana, which is the name of your company, your brand, right? What is prana? Prana is vitality. It is a life force. So we have the superpower with us all the time, but we are not using it. We hardly ever land up using the entire capacity of our lungs, and we have this beautiful khazana treasure in our uh, in India, right, of pranayam, of yoga. What is that? That is pretty much using or vitality. So if we take help of our breath and use that prana to for it to become way of life, things change. Automatically your vibrations become higher and your life changes.
Very nicely said. Very nicely said. In fact, every time I ask someone who's, teaching a modality or a therapy, they have these whole series of techniques saying, okay, you have to sit here, you have to do this, you have to do that. There are a whole lot of healing modalities that have come, like Reiki, Terra Mycecum, Theta Healing, Access Bar, Siddha Science. In fact, my mother has her own modality. And so
Right.
you're trying to teach me. I love how you've simplified it. This is exactly what we said in the previous panel. The beauty of life is when you can simplify, demystify things, and make it practical and applicable in a daily life. And you just brought down the whole meditation into one technique called breathing.
Yes.
How simplified is that and beautiful is that?
Yeah. You are absolutely right, because there was this American sculptor who said that simplicity is complexity resolved, right? And that is what it is all about. And what I say is that I follow Vipassana does not mean that you have to follow the same. You can find your own path to wherever it is that you want to reach. However, use something, because there are ancient hermits, saints, gurus, Buddhas who have reached there and they've shown us the path. So without getting into this branded way of being or going following somebody blindly, because of that person having evolved, he has done it because he has worked towards it, or she has done that work. They're showing you the path. Just by praying to them, you will not reach there. You have to follow the path. They are showing it to you. So that becomes a very important lesson in meditation, right? Now, where breathing is concerned, like I said, that you follow whatever path you want to follow, but do it. It's very crucial. It's like, if you want to reach a destination, if you put it on your GPS, it will show you different paths. Which path you want to take, which path you want to set is up to you. So you have that freedom. Go ahead and do it.
I love that GPS word. I actually had a list of questions to ask you, but I always forget the list when I'm talking to you because you literally lead to the next question. GPS. There's no GPS on how to navigate our mind. Our mind is filled with millions of memories from our past. And sometimes we don't know how to navigate through this and
Right.
live in the moment instead of living in anxiety and fear of the future or in
Yeah.
pain of the past. How
Yeah.
do you navigate this mind? Because now you're a doctor of the mind as well. Tell us an easy technique on how to navigate the mind.
Okay, so we all have GPS and we all can navigate it. The difference is, so to tell you a small, short, quick story, is that मैं भगवान से रोज प्रार्थना करती थी सुबह शाम कि मुझे भगवान लॉटरी लगनी चाहिए, लॉटरी लगनी चाहिए, लॉटरी, every single day for years I did it. Finally God was fed up. He came in front of me and said, "Do you need to buy a ticket?" Right? Same thing, we all have the GPS, we all have the blueprint to reach that ultimate goal that we want to, which is salvation, or you could put any other goal over there. You have the map, but unless and until you don't enter the beginning point and the end point, the GPS is not going to work. Same thing with the mind. If you set a goal for yourself and then put a location where you're beginning, it will show you the path. So that is how it works.
How lovely. It's like going into a restaurant and telling the waiter, give me food. And the waiter's like, what? What do you want?
Yeah.
And this guy's like, just give me food. You
Yeah.
have to know what you want.
Yeah.
The universe is functioning like that, right? You
Yes.
have to be very clear when you manifest and tell the universe, this is what I want.
Yeah.
I want happiness, I want peace, I want health, I want wealth, I want glory, I want fame. Be very specific about what you want because the universe is very busy. There are 7 billion human beings and billions of animals constantly wishing and praying every single minute. And the
Yeah.
universe doesn't understand confusing manifestations. Do you
But
believe
be
in that?
careful what you're asking for, and that's my next suggestion. Is that, I mean, I thought about this a lot. That when you ask people, "What is it that you want?" most of the people say, "Oh, I want to be happy." Then my next question is that you don't want that, and they look at me surprisingly like, "Why would you say that?" And I say that because who's a person who's happy all the time? You don't want to be in that stage, right? You don't want to be in a mental hospital because you're laughing and enjoying yourself all the time. So think about what you're asking, be careful. So then the point is, then what do I want in my life? That is what you need to figure out. So what analysis or what result I have come to for myself is to have the capability and the capacity to feel each and every emotion as I'm feeling it, as richly and as deeply. Dimple, you are aware I lost my father in December. So would I then say that, oh God, I want happiness? No, I want to grieve. I want to feel the sadness of a loss of my father who I loved so much. So that's what one has to be careful about. Be wary of what you're asking for and then work towards it.
Very well said. Very well said. In fact, we had this conversation last time and it hit me. When you said, maybe Dimple, I don't want happiness sometimes. And I was like, really? Who would say that? I don't want happiness. And you explained to me how important it is to be able to feel
Yeah.
feelings and
Yeah.
going through that curve,
Yeah.
going through that actual curve of feeling that emotion, feeling that grievances, feeling that pain. And then when you're ready to resolve and let it go, only then. But if you
Yeah.
start trying to let it go without completing the process,
Yeah.
you're going to be caught in a mess, right?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Like Ayurveda, I mean, I heard your earlier talk where you also said that psychosomatic illnesses is a, it's a very big thing now. And Ayurveda had recognized this long time back. It is based on that pretty much, isn't it? So that becomes a very important thing, that if you don't feel the emotion as it is occurring and don't let go of it, that again becomes the next step. That if you keep grieving, then that's depression. So you grieve to a point where you have to allow yourself to feel it so richly that there's no residual grief left anymore. Like today I can speak about my father without my eyes welling up, but till few days back I couldn't. And that is because I knew that, that emotion is still there in me, and let me just feel it and let me cry, it's okay. Today I can speak without it because I've completed the process, right? So that makes a big difference to everything.
That brings me to a very important question on emotions. A lot of times we have experiences in our life which leads to a certain kind of emotion. To make a decision, they keep saying separate the experience from the emotion and look at it objectively. Because
Yeah.
a lot of times the event is 5%, it's a reaction to it that is 95%.
Absolutely.
How important is it to separate the emotion from experience? And should we do this all the time or only on select periods of time?
Okay, that's a very good question. So what happens is when something happens, and we are human beings, right? So when people say to me that, oh, you're a psychologist, how can you feel like this? I said, yes, but before being, or even if I am a psychologist, I'm a human being first and foremost. So if I'm hit by somebody, I'm going to cry out in pain. That is an emotion that I'm going to feel. So you have to be aware. The thing is, drashta bhav, जिसे कहते हैं, to be an observer, that is an important way of being, but that takes work. So it is the whole meditation or self-awareness leads you to that drashta bhavana, where after a certain point then you can see yourself as what you're going through. So it's a little complex in that sense, but to make it very simplified is that you have to feel each emotion richly and deeply. Very important. At the same time, be aware that this is an emotion I'm going through. It has to end. You cannot enjoy, you cannot start enjoying that emotion, because what happens is human beings are uh, 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 we are made in such a way that we like to dwell in a certain thing because of different reasons. So it might be attention from your loved ones. Arey, you're feeling low, come, I'll take you out. Arey, you're feeling low, let's do this. So that you start enjoying the attention more than the feeling low. So even if you're not feeling low, you will create that low feeling in yourself unconsciously so that you get that attention from your loved one. Or it could be that, anger, like people get angry. Why do people get angry? Right, for no reason. And you're like, oh, this guy has temper issues. When that person was born, he didn't come with a blueprint saying that this is an angry person. No, that happens over a period of time because he gets the benefit or the gift or the prize or whatever it is that you want to call it by being angry. So they use it as their trump card. After that, it becomes like, oh, this person is an angry person, so people are scared to go. Then where is the richness in the relationships that one can enjoy, because the people are so scared to come to you? Pata nahi what will get chucked at my face, right? I mean, stay away. So that kind of a thing.
It's like a defense mechanism. And in fact, it's funny that you brought this up. I had a patient, like, I mean, generally with all our patients, what we do is we put them through medication and treatment, and we give them the Panchakarma treatment. We also give them a very strict diet. Of course, the last 90 days, the clinic has been shut. So we started shifting our work towards an online academy, and we've been teaching Ayurveda. We do a lot of counseling for our patients on day 2, day 3 of the treatment. And there was one patient who was constantly complaining, this is not happening, that's not happening despite the treatment. And I asked her, I said, you like being sick? She's like, what? I said, you like being sick because that's the only way you get attention from your husband and your daughter. And she's like, and after a few seconds, she welled up with tears and she said, it's true. That's the only time I get attention from our family.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you another question, which brings me up with this point, with all the heat that is going around here. A lot of times we're projecting our biases, our prejudices, our opinions onto another person and constantly influencing their lives with ideas of how we want them to live their life.
Yeah.
How do we stop ourselves from doing that? Because that is so toxic. It's also like gaslighting, right?
Absolutely.
We do this subconsciously. Parents do it to their kids, expect them to color between the lines of their lives. How do we stop doing this?
So there's a very interesting phenomenon called the butterfly effect, where it has been proven that a butterfly flutters its wings in Japan and there is an actual tornado in Tennessee, in America. So imagine a flutter of a butterfly can create so much of whatever it is, force of nature. Imagine us. What are we? We are ultimately made of elements, right? And we have certain energy, we have prana, we have vibration. Now, you know that, if you meet me and I'm not happy, even if I don't open my mouth, with the micro expressions, if there are any, or with my body language, you will be able to tell whether I'm happy or not. So my vibration or my body language will speak to you even before I speak. So that makes a difference. Where is that coming from? It's coming from your thoughts, what's going on in your head. That will project on the other person. Like people tell me, oh, you've got positive vibe, right? This did not happen just like that. I had to work on it because what darkness I went through in my own life, my vibe was very low, my energy was very low. And at that time, nobody said, oh, you're giving out low vibe. No, that didn't happen. But I knew it somewhere deep down that I had got to work on myself. So everybody has obstacles, everybody goes through whatever they have to go through in their lives. However, we can put a stop to it. If you say that, okay, this is where I change my life. So decision, we say that, oh, I took 1 year to make this decision. No, decision happens in a moment. Your thinking might lead to that, but decision always happens in a moment. Right now, I choose that my vibration will be higher than what it ever was. Then what? If you made that decision, then you get to thinking, okay, now what should I do? How can I become a positive person? How do I change myself, my vibration, so that the surroundings change? Now, how is that? Is what I have always said that, and it's been said by many philosophers, of course, and I have learned to believe because I've experienced it myself, is world doesn't exist outside of us. It doesn't. Why do I say that? Because if I make you sit right next to me and we are looking at the same scenery, exactly the same scenery, and if I ask you to write down what you're seeing and what I'm seeing, it'll be 100% different. You take 10 more people sitting in the same row and ask them to write, they will write something else. None of our description will match. Why is that? We are looking at the same thing. That's because the world is not outside, it is inside of you. So that becomes a very crucial point. Another big thing is that your mind does not exist in your body. You exist in the mind, the body exists in the mind. So that becomes a very crucial thing. So now, if mind is such a big thing, if world is not outside, it is in us, why not make a beautiful world to live in? For that, you got to look after the temple that you live in, which is your physical body. So go ahead and look after yourself. Why do we punish ourselves? Why do we not look after ourselves? What is causing us to do that? Think about that. If you are overweight, if you're obese, what is that you're not letting go, that the weight is remaining with you? So you got to analyze that. And once you start doing it, then you will realize that, okay, I need to change this part. It is a lot of it is related to your thinking. And that's why my Harvard starts tomorrow. In fact, my next module for Harvard, the master's that I'm doing from Harvard, the topic that I've chosen, the subject I've chosen is psychology of eating, because we have a lot of issues with obesity in India, and I want to work with people for that as well, to figure out why are they not, because they go on diets, they work out, they take medication, they undergo surgery, yet they do not reach the optimal weight that they should. And I do not mean zero figure or skinny, no, I'm just saying that healthy. Can you run up and down 2 floors of stairs without huffing and puffing? Think about it, right? So that is what it is. So why are we not doing it? It all is in the mind, right? You know that the samosa is not good for me, but we still eat it. What is it? Why is it? Are our eyes bigger than our stomachs? So that is a physical health part, of course. So coming to the vibrations, that is how it is, that you need to make your world beautiful, make your home clean, keep it clutter free, clean your steps, clean your passage, clean whatever you can. Why not? Ultimately, it will change your whole life.
God, this answer had so many neurons firing up in my head. I had so many things, because you said a couple of things like, uh, you don't live in your body lives in your mind.
Yeah.
It's beautiful because, we have the saying, in Shiva philosophy, I exist within the universe, and the entire universe exists within me. The whole
Absolutely.
of the universe, the power of the universe is within me. And there's another thing you said, happiness is nothing but a state of mind.
Yeah.
Heaven and hell don't exist in a physical form. There's a state of mind. The same scenery, the same landscape can give different experiences, different emotions to different people. That's a powerful thing that just lit up another neuron in my brain. And when you spoke of the butterfly effect, I remember a powerful line that I read. Quantum physics says the words and the thoughts from your mind can change the vibrational frequency of an energy particle next to you, which can affect the core of a star millions of light years from here.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I completely believe in this. I do.
Powerful, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And there's a very interesting. Sorry. Sorry. You were saying something. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. I want you to finish your thought because I had a very powerful question for you.
All right. So I'll quickly narrate this very interesting story I just came across, that a man died and he went to heaven. So he met God at the gates of heaven. So the human being said that, oh, I'm so happy to meet my creator. And the God looked surprised and he said, I was going to say the same thing. So isn't that fascinating? I mean, it's just so brilliant. Yeah.
I heard that story for the first time and I'm actually laughing because I keep praying to Shiva saying, oh, Shiva, let me be, part of your state of mind. And now when I meet Shiva, Shiva's going to be part of your state of mind.
But you are Shiva. Look at the color you're wearing, Dimple.
Oh my God.
It's the color of Shiva. So,
You're very kind with your words. You're very kind with your words. In fact, I keep reminding myself, like when things get difficult, I remember your technique. Breathing, which means you can meditate in any part of the world, even when you're driving or when you're walking. Just focus on 3 breaths. And when I focus on those 3 breaths, I say, Om Namah Shivaya, hope you're with me. And then I can literally hear him say that you are part of me, I'm part of you. I keep repeating those sentences and it's so powerful. That brings me to the next question. A powerful line that I heard in Life of Pi, Irfan Khan's movie, that stayed with me. I mean, that loving gentleman left our abode, for a better world. But he said something, the whole of life is the act of letting go.
Yeah. Absolutely, because where does anything start in your aversion, craving? These are the 2 things which Vipassana also talks about. What is craving and what is aversion? It's all about that. It's all about attachment. It's all about, why do I want to do this? Right? So for example, when I began this journey, I said to myself that no, I want to increase the happiness quotient of India. I was attached to it. Right? And then I tried to create quite a few things. Nothing worked. I was, like, no, nobody heard me, nobody. Then I thought that why is this happening? Why am I trying to create something beautiful? Why is it not happening? Why aren't people responding to me? There is no money involved. There's nothing that there was for me in that sense that people should say, oh, she's making money, I'm not getting money. What was it? So I deep dived into it, and when I was meditating, that's the thought that came to my mind. I was attached to raising the happiness quotient of India. So I let go of it. I said, no, I'm not going to do anything of that sort. Let me continue on this path and we will see where it goes. So, yes, even today, I want to raise the happiness quotient, but I'm not hankering after it. I'm not attached to it. Now, then the question comes, people ask me that, oh, then that means if I meditate, will I become detached? So, again, the interesting part is being detached does not mean love doesn't exist. That will I not then feel the same feelings for my children? That is not what attachment is. In fact, it is the exact opposite to say that I can love my children so much more because I'm detached from them. Like Rumi, I think Rumi was the poet who said that we don't create children. We are mere channels of bringing these souls to the planet, right? So we don't own them. I mean, we expect so much from them. Why? So sure, you need to discipline them, and sure, you need to guide them. However, it's not like I can topo my dreams on my children. I have to allow them to maximize their potential. So that becomes a very important thing. But if I'm attached to saying that ये तो मेरे बुढ़ापे का सहारा है, what am I going to do when I become old? They're going to look after me. These are all attachments. How about changing that narrative to say that I will provide them as a parent what I'm supposed to? Let them fly. Let them do the best that they can in their lives, and that includes making mistakes. You have to let them make mistakes. That's how resilience grows. If you don't put a little bit of stress on any metal, you cannot change it, right? So children are same, they are malleable, right? You have to, but adequate pressure, not too much, not too little. That much pressure is required for them to make themselves into their best self. So that is important. So as a parent or as a spouse or as a human being, if I'm attached to certain things, then that's the downfall. But if I'm detached and I do my karma, what I'm meant to do, that's fine. Then you will reach wherever you set your goal to.
That's so liberating. That answer is so liberating at so many levels. If I had to, like, sum up your answer in one word, I would say liberating. When we let go of bondage, when we find the highest productivity levels in our life, physically, mentally, and emotionally, the worst bondage is not the physical bondage, but it's the emotional and mental bondage that we create, that attachment to the result. That's where Krishna said, Karmanyevadikaraste mafalishu kadachan. This applies to everything. And you so beautifully said, like you repeated Rumi's lines, that parents are simply medium for the children to come into the world. There's no reason for them to be overprotective of their creation and say that, oh, I created this. And I say this often to, parents who come to the clinic, bringing their child, dragging the child literally to the Ayurvedic clinic saying, I want my child to practice Ayurveda. I said, what do you want to practice? You practice. Don't make a decision on behalf of the child. Let the child decide on their own.
Absolutely.
That's a beautiful lesson. And you have two beautiful kids of your own. There's a lot of parenting skills to be learned from you. What is the best tip you would give to someone on parenting?
Like I said, that, don't get attached to them. It does not mean you don't love them. In fact, if you're not attached, you will be able to love them even more. Like we expect that for ourselves, right? That whoever loves me should accept me with my negatives, with my faults, with my positive things. They should not judge me. But yet with our children, we are constantly saying, Are, don't do this, don't do that. Let them be. Just let them be. You be the guiding light for them. Do not drag them anywhere. Do not push them anywhere. Do not pull them anywhere. Just being is enough. And for heaven's sake, for till 16 years of age, do not think of, because that's a lot of parents which are doing right now, is that they become friends. They become friends. The children don't need friends, they need parent till they're 16. After 16, you can become a friend, but you can be a friendly parent, but don't be a friend, because then what is important is that they need to be trimmed, they need to be molded, they need to be, not again by putting too much pressure or letting them grow like weeds. No, not like that. So that becomes an important aspect of identifying what is it and how is it that, and every parent is different. So just because my neighbor who's a mother is doing that with her child and it has worked, need not mean that it will work for you too. It's a very, very individualistic relationship, every parent and with every child. So even though I have two children, my relationship with each is very different. So that happens.
In fact, what I like about this answer is while the world is fighting between extremities,
Yeah.
there is racism and there is activism, there is
Yeah.
hate and there is love, you keep bringing it into the center with a lot of discipline. Tough love from parents is the best form of love because you're doing it for the betterment of the child.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't matter how much you love the child, but at the end of the day, you have to be the parent because if you start being a friend, who's going to be the parent? That
Yeah.
was so beautifully said, which brings me to another question. In fact, I think it's Rumi who said that the most beautiful relationships are those that hold space for each other and
Mm.
give breathing space.
Yeah.
What is the advice that you have for relationships, romantic relationships, how a couple should exist in harmony and peace and in space? How can they hold space for each other?
So it might seem a bit of an anti answer, so to say, because if I really wish I had known this 20 years back, my life would have been completely different. However, it's okay. That was part of who I am right now. It's taught me a lot right now. And after studying, of course, psychology, again, that is what happens, right? That we expect a lot from our partner and we do not give the space that is required to the person. So, these two things, if you look at it and accept the other person as they are and provide enough space, at the same time, again, it is not like you can do whatever you want to do. No, there has to be some limitations, there has to be some framework into which you have to fit the relationship. Like if you take the example of a building, right, you have to dig the ground so that the basement, the foundation becomes strong. You have to put the grid in which the bricks and mortar and everything is laid, and then you have to decorate it. It's similar thing. You have got to have a framework for any relationship, and within that, so like an apartment, if I buy an apartment, you buy the same apartment, you will decorate it very differently, right? So that is very crucial. So even if you're in relationship with somebody and that's broken and you go into the next relationship, be aware that the person is not the same. So you have to work it. It needs nourishment. Every relationship, every single day needs nourishment. Taking for granted is something that you have to guard your relationship against. And screen time is becoming a big thing in relationships going awry. It's just, destroying relationships, be it romantic or otherwise.
Oh my God. You won't believe, just in the previous panel, I just got off the panel discussion with Nevish and Najma Hussain. Uh, she was saying, I'll call you tomorrow. I said, don't call me. Tomorrow's digital detox. I've been on, this digital platform for 19 hours. 18
Yeah.
hours. Tomorrow is going to be a day with just my niece, who's 3 years old.
Yes.
She doesn't even complete her sentences. And we have the most beautiful conversations. She would come and comb my hair. And the last live stream I did, I kid you not, she climbed, she came into the live stream, she projected her face onto the camera, and the last 20 minutes she was combing my hair while I was giving an interview. And I couldn't get it off. And I told the viewers, I said, there were 300 or 400 viewers watching it at that point in time, asking me questions about Ayurveda, and I was very seriously answering those questions. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't get this monkey, this stylist. They said, you have such a beautiful hairstylist. I said, yeah, she's certified by the monkeys, but I can't get her off my back because she's going to scream loudly and I won't be able to complete the interview. So I'll let her do what she wants. I'm doing what I'm on. That's something that happened. It's so beautiful moment. And
Yeah.
the digital detox day, and I can't wait for it. Aditi, I want to ask you, values are conflicting sometimes. Values are different sometimes. Like between me and my parents also, we have very different values because of our generation gaps as well, right? What are the top 5 most important values in your life that you would never trade with anything else?
So, values and morals again is a very touchy topic for most, and the reason is because everybody thinks that their morals and their values are the best. But I also feel that in my life, things change, we evolve, and as we evolve, morals and values change. Right? To give you an example, I am currently working for the transgender community. Now, 10 years back, if you had asked me that would I be working with transgender community, I would have probably said no because I was scared of them. Right? Uh, so Does that mean that I was not being authentic that time? No, I was, because that was the conditioning that I had for myself. It was put upon me by the society and I had absorbed it. So I'm not holding the society responsible. I'm holding myself accountable to say that, yes, I absorbed that to say that I'm scared. Right? Today, when things have changed, I'm working with them very closely. So my values or my whatever beliefs I held, so value and beliefs are very close, right? They're close knit. Those have changed. So what is my, I wouldn't call it five values as such. I would just put it in one sentence, is just that be your authentic self. That is my value. That's my morals. That's it. I don't have any list on anything like that.
I
Just
love
be
that.
your authentic self.
I love how you simplify everything. I'll give you a number and you always bring it down to one. I asked you techniques of meditation, you brought it down to one, breathing. Then I asked you the five most important values, be authentic. This couldn't have been said better by anyone else, you know. I was going to ask you another question which had a number, but I'm going to cancel that, you know, because I was going to ask you if the captain asked you to jump off the ship with five most favorite belongings. Maybe I can change that question a little. Your favorite memories that you hold on to for energy, not because it's some kind of a, you know, a baggage or a luggage, you know, that occupies space, but something that gives you constant source of energy. I know your love for your father taught you a lot. What are those few memories that you love holding on to? And you should, you know, advise our viewers also that there are some memories that give you a lot of energy. Like, you know, thinking of my grandmother makes me very happy and energetic.
Hmm.
Those memories for you, are there any that you hold on to?
Oh, there are many, but I don't really hold on to them because it's over. They're past, right? If I keep dwelling in the past, I will not be able to develop myself the way I want to. That's something that I can describe. However, the question that you're asking me is what are those memories that you hold on to? So I have given this analogy of a backpack. We all carry this backpack when we are born. We are gifted this backpack by ourselves, and we start collecting rubbish in it. We collect bad memories, we create our karma, and there's a lot of baggage that we carry in our back to a level where sometimes it becomes very heavy and we collapse under that baggage. So what I did was, when I realized that my baggage was so heavy that it was almost too dark for me to even see the light at the end of the tunnel, I said, okay, now I'm going to start discarding this nonsense that I've been carrying. So what I do is, whenever I'm meditating, I delve into those kind of memories which still hold charge in my head. So it's not about CTRL delete, because you can't. I wish we had that, but maybe not, right? So I look at the memories that still cause a charge in my body. There's some kind of a feeling, emotion that occurs in me, and I let go of that memory. So then slowly, the backpack is becoming lighter and lighter. So that is what I'm working on, not what has happened. Oh, I won Mrs. World. Oh, I did medicine. Ho gaya, khatam. There's no point discussing that anymore. It's over and done with. What is it today that I can do so that I reach my goal? So I'll describe my goal very quickly, is that I want to die consciously. I want to die. Earlier, again, 10 years back, if you'd asked me, I would have said I want to die in my sleep. Not anymore. I want to be wide awake. I want my brain to be as sharp as it is today, if not sharper. That is my goal. I want to be surrounded by my loved ones when I die. I don't want to not have so many of my loved ones around me, or at least come and meet me before I depart. You know, but this third thing I'm okay with. So even if I'm not attached to that, but these first two things I'm working on detaching myself from those goals, because I'm attached to this fact that I want to die consciously, right? So I'm working on those. That's still there in my backpack, so to say. So I'm working on that. So to reach that goal, what is it that I will have to do today so that I achieve that goal? So that is my goal, and we are working towards it. Work in progress.
Lovely, lovely. You just touched on a beautiful topic called samadhi, which
Yeah.
is having awareness and consciousness even in your last moments and
Yeah.
embracing death instead of being afraid of it, instead
Yeah.
of running away from it. That was such a beautiful way of explaining samadhi. In fact, my great grandmother took samadhi. The second time she was hospitalized, the first time she broke her hip
Hmm.
and she survived. She earned her own living for the last 40 years of her life. She was widowed at a very young age. She didn't take a single rupee. She paid all her hospital bills before she left.
Hmm.
Second time she was hospitalized, she knew this is it. The
Hmm.
first time she didn't take any oath, but the second time when she was hospitalized, she said, "Take me home, take these pipes off me. I know the time has come." She
Yeah.
took Samadhi and she lasted for about 24 to 48 hours without food or water. And she
Hmm.
also gave up all attachment to family, friends, and relatives.
Right.
We celebrated her passing away with a massive ritual wherein it's called Diksha in
Yes.
Jainism.
Yes.
Wore
And
white.
that's beautiful. Yeah, I love Jainism for that. It's so well thought through and it's so scientific in that sense.
I know. In fact, the last celebration of hers, I remember uh, that moment took me, it was so overwhelming at the same time because there were thousands of people on the streets following the truck where she was made to sit upright in erect position, not lying down because she had joined a happy place, like the heaven. We were throwing color in the air, red color, like as if it was holy. And we
Hmm.
were all smeared in color head to toe, celebrating her life. And I was like, this is amazing. We're not talking about death, we're celebrating life, even in that last moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That was so powerful for me. In fact, in the previous panel, we were talking about a dear client and an actor who passed away. And I said, the media spilled about his tragic end instead of talking about his accomplishments, the beautiful life he lived. Why
Hmm.
don't we talk about that?
Yeah.
Shifting focus and detachment is so beautiful. And I remember having a conversation with you in our last live stream with my parents. And I said, we've had several meltdowns, my parents and I. And
Hmm.
every time I break down into multiple pieces, when I put myself back together, I let go of the pieces that are not relevant anymore. So there are only few pieces. And
Hmm.
the next time I have a breakdown, I break down into only 2 to 3 pieces.
Right.
And the next time I'm going to have a breakdown, I'm going to probably break down into just one piece,
Yeah.
which brings me back to your core USP, simplifying life into one word. Every time I ask her a question, she'll give me one answer: liberating, detaching, breathing. Everything comes to one word. What is a message that you have for the viewers? Because this is the grand finale of Prakshay 2020, the world's online platform for Ayurvedic life sciences. We want to, without attachment, give it a platform of worldwide recognition, a global phenomena, and a household practice. That is the vision that we have to make it affordable, accessible, and approachable, demystified, simplified for everybody. What is the final message that you have for the viewers? Because this is a grand finale panel with none other than Dr. Aditi Gojekar. You've been so lucky for me. The previous talk show I had 55 episodes. You were my grand finale guest,
Yes.
and I was your guest. So
Thank you for giving me that honor, Dimple. You're very kind, very sweet. But firstly, before the message part, I mean, frankly, I don't think I've reached that level where I can, like give message or anything like that. But I would like to share what I have learned along the way. But before that, I would like to wish you heartiest congratulations for Prakshay 2020, and thank you for having me. And a special thanks to Mr. Dr. Chenraj for creating this, for facilitating this wonderful platform for spreading so much positivity, joy, and wisdom to everybody who's listening, and for 85,000 students, right? I mean, that's amazing. So that's an awesome job work that you guys are doing. So hats off to that. And what I would like to share is that balance. Balance is the word that I would like to leave the viewers with, because think about it, like you said, that there is extremes happening right now. So be it the nepotism or be it the racism, it's extreme, right? We need to seek balance. I mean, think about, if you really want to pay homage to Sushant leaving this life, giving up his life, is that he did not give it up to create this negativity, right? He ended his life. It's not for that. Don't, that is insulting him by creating hate. He did not stand for hate, because I've been following his posts, though I didn't know him personally, but I know what he was reading, and quantum physics and astronomy, and how interested he was in the universe. So he was a person who had so much compassion, love, and knowledge. So don't let that life go waste. If he's committed suicide, don't create hate. So think about it and seek balance in life. It is all about balance. So whether it is a breakdown with your parents, see to it that you seek balance in your relationship with them. And when you do that, when you are balanced, there will be no breakdown. So you will not break down even in one piece anymore. You will be complete because you are whole and complete. So why break down?
that's so beautifully said. In fact, Aditi, I'm going to incorporate this recipe, this formula into my life and make sure there is no such thing as a breakdown itself because I'm one and wholesome, like you said. It's so well said. And if I might just add a few lines, for Sushant Singh Rajput, because we're speaking about him with so much kindness, love, and affection. I was very blessed and fortunate and lucky to have met him at Prana Healthcare Center. He just walked in with this friend. I was just given a phone call that we're bringing a very important client. Just make sure, confidentiality is maintained, everything. And I said, of course, while the treatment's going on, nothing will be revealed. And he just walked in and sat there. And I was looking at him. I was like, oh my God, tell me this is the same person I think he is. And I looked at my manager. She's like, yeah, it's the same person. I was like, okay. He went and met the doctor. He said, no, I'm not ready, for this medicine and treatment. I said, okay. Came and sat with me for 1 hour in a small 700 square feet clinic for that 1 hour. And the next day again, he sat with me for 1 hour, 2 hours of conversation with this gentleman. Such a kind, loving soul. He had nothing but love for people. And I asked him, what do you want in life? He's like, the only time I felt happy in the last few weeks or months or years is when he donated 1 crore.
I know, I read about
1 crore for rehabilitation, efforts for rescue efforts and rehabilitation. And he said, somebody just came out of the crowd and hugged him and said, your donation saved mine and my family's life. He's like, the guy had tears in his eyes. That moment has stayed with him. That is the gentleman we're talking about.
Yeah.
So full of kindness and love. And every time he only spoke about quantum physics, universe, Tesla, energy particles. He kept saying, what is the purpose of life? We're all energy particles.
Yeah.
That was the message that boy had.
Yeah.
And we could embrace him, even in his departure.
Yeah.
Best of memories, just like how you said.
Absolutely. No, really, I pray for his soul to really rest in peace every single day. Every time I meditate, I, send him this energy that his soul is happy wherever it is.
And I thank you, for bringing this topic up, because yesterday's panel, 5 p.m. panel was dedicated to Sushant Singh Rajput. Today's panel is also ending with a positive note, with inspiration, hope, and faith for all the young boys and girls out there. There definitely is goodness and kindness left in the world. Be kind to others, but most importantly, be kind to yourself.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi Gojrikar, for being on this panel. You've always been a lucky mascot for me, a guest. I can't thank you enough for the words of wisdom that you've shared with us. I, in fact, will listen to this interview again so I can incorporate those techniques in my own life.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. God bless you, and God bless every viewer that's watching this.
Thank you so much, Dr. Aditi. Thank you so much.
At this point of time, the world is realizing that preventive health care is need of the hour. Swami Vivekananda always emphasized that mind, body and soul requires right kind of thoughts and nutrients. What better than yoga and Ayurveda, a natural science which is deeply rooted in our tradition and culture, which gives us the opportunity to explore ourselves for our well-being. This philosophy is deeply embedded in our roots. Prevention is better than cure. Yoga and Ayurveda enriches our immune system. It helps us in developing our mental and physical well-being, and it's a way of life. At Jain University, it's our vision to make this knowledge available to everyone across the globe.
The time has come for us to bring in a new revolution in healthcare life sciences by marrying 5,000-year-old traditional Ayurvedic science with modern research-based science. We will be able to address diseases at the root cause level and not just cure it, but also prevent it. Our aim is to simplify Ayurveda, demystify this ancient science so we can apply it in our daily lives and have a more holistic approach to life at a body, mind and emotion level. Ayurveda is not just a science, it is an art, it is a language that we must all learn, because this is a language that nature uses to communicate with us. It is also a manual that has been given by nature, telling us how to take care of this piece of nature.
Namaste. I attended the workshop of Prana and it was so interesting, so engaging, so insightful. It was an eye-opener for me. I realized Ayurveda is not something you reach for only when you're unwell, but it is something you can practice every day for your own well-being and the well-being of your family. And I also realized how important it is to listen to the subtle messages from the self. So often my intuitive mind had pointed me in the right direction, but my intellectual mind came in the way and led me astray. So thank you, Dimple, and all at Prana.
Ayurveda is the quantum of everything. It is the energetic language that unifies all matter, and it's how we understand the different substances that we use to heal our body, mind, and spirit.
Imagine if you could control the elements in your body with the foods that you eat to fight disease.
Thank you.